Thank you for joining us today at the Project Management Institute's Sustainability Summit 2023. We hope you enjoyed that session, and we will now have a short break.
Hello, my name is Merv Wyeth. I'm a trustee and chapter leader for PMI UK. I'm really proud to be a grandfather. I've got 3 grandsons, a little girl on the way. And what I think is really disappointing is they're not going to enjoy the kind of winters that I enjoyed. Winters with deep snow, snow drifts, where snowball fights, etc. were aplenty. When I was their age, it seemed that happened every year. Now we have mild winters. The weather has clearly changed, and it's just one of perhaps many things that they want to enjoy. So I want to have a maximum impact as a grandfather in order to leave them with a better world. And one of the ways in which I think I can do that is by acting as a sponsor of all these fantastic activities that our volunteers are actually engaged in.
Hi everyone, I'm Esther Gordon-Smith and I'm one of the Sustainability Community of Action volunteers, and I'm going to talk to you today about mental models of human settlements. So first thing, what is a mental model? Well, let's start with a story. In this story, a group of people are running across a field, but there are 3 different people watching. One person thinks, oh, they must be playing a nice game, maybe I'll join in. One thinks, oh, it must be a race, maybe I'll see who'll win. And the last person thinks, oh my goodness, maybe they're being chased by a tiger. Your mental model dictates how you see the world and probably how you will behave and some of the decisions that you will make. Here's another mental model. To some people, this is a door. To some people, this is the seat of power in the United Kingdom. And to some people, this is a set of steps with no ramp, which means it's not accessible for wheelchairs. I like peanut butter, so for me, my mental model says this is a tasty snack. But for somebody who's allergic, this is clearly an existential threat. And finally, quite a lot of you probably don't have a mental model for what this is, but it's actually a dressmaking tool for cutting fabric. So let's go back to Saltwich, which is the town we were talking about last time, which exists only in my imagination. So Saltwich and Pepperwich are about 10 miles apart. So for a Roman legionary's mental model, that's probably a 3-hour march or maybe an hour on a horse. But if you had somebody in a fighter jet going 10 miles, well, they can do it in 37 seconds, but their mental model will probably be more about where are they going to land? Or say that you live in modern day Saltwich and you work in Pepperwich. How are you going to get to work? So some people's mental model will be, oh, I'll get in the car. Other people's mental model will be, oh, I'll get the train. And of course, a lot of this is dictated whether there is a train link between Saltwich and Pepperwich or not. For some people, their mental model is more about the journey than the destination. And so for the petrol heads among us, the route that they select might be more about which route they think is more fun. For some people, they're going to think about it in terms of energy and energy vectors. So for some people, it's, well, how much potential energy am I going to have to find in order to create that sort of kinetic energy to move that mass from A to B? And so that's one of the reasons that we can have such wildly different responses to the same sorts of events. So say, for the sake of argument, Saltwich is getting a bypass. For some people, this is just going to be a relief. Other people, this is going to be something to protest about. Some people, that's going to be an opportunity to bid for some work, and other people might be concerned about roadworks. Our mental models affect our responses, and they affect the decisions that we make. So let's break down some systems for you. Here's the system of human. So humans are a funny species. We don't really have pronounced physical adaptations to our environments. And so the average human can tolerate temperatures from about 35 degrees before we overheat down to about 4 degrees. But that's predicated on if you can continually do star jumps. Babies need to be, for example, more like a nice toasty 33 to 35 degrees. And that's one of the reasons humans came out of the plains of Africa, where there was a nice temperate climate. What's fairly unique about humans, though, is what we did adapt was the ability to control fire and the ability to clothe ourselves. And we also created the ability to build settlements for ourselves and shelter in a way that other species haven't. And so that brings us on to, okay, what is the system of settlement? So in some ways, it's a place where we can live happily, where food comes to us, fuel comes to us, water comes to us, and hopefully clean air, though, of course, that's not always a reality. But it's also a place where waste accumulates and sewage accumulates and diseases spread around easily. And so an important facet is waste management and hygiene within a city. It's a place where you're stationary, so you accept what comes to you, which could be a flood, for example, but it's also a place that's easier to defend generally. And one of the things about cities is just, in some ways, how interconnected they are, how so many different people provide so many services, but also how isolated we can be from some of those supply chains nowadays. So whereas for some people, their mental model of a house might be, okay, I'll go to the estate agent. For people in the built environment sector, we probably are more used to breaking it down into, well, bricks and mortar. But what about some of the other supply chains? For us, maybe clothing is about, I'll go to the shop and speak to the person in the shop. But who made the clothes that got there, and who made the fabric, and how was the fabric woven, and how was the thread made for the fabric, and who grew the source material in the first place? There could be quite complex supply chains that lead up to us being able to go to the shop and buy a t-shirt. And so what I'm going to talk about to conclude is paradigms. So a paradigm is a set of theories that explain how a particular subject is understood. And a paradigm shift is a time when the usual and accepted way of doing something completely changes. And to be empowered is to give someone the freedom to do something. In the old story, everyone who's holding a hammer sees everything as a nail. But could we see human settlements differently? Do we have to hold it as a hammer, or could there be a lot of different facets to it? If we're thinking about new projects for Saltwich, if it's a road, is time the most important? Or if it's housing, is the housing market the biggest driver? If we're expanding a port, is it the most jobs that are created that's important? Or is it the biggest ships that can be accommodated? If we're thinking about hospitals, is the measure that we're really looking for the number of beds, or is it health? I mean, does anyone else sometimes feel like they're the second hamster in this and you're just stuck on a wheel of other people's decisions? So what I'd encourage us all to do is to think about, could we have the freedom to have some different thoughts? What are the best options to help people get where they want to go? Do human settlements have to be in conflict with nature, or are there different ways to work together? Start asking, what would happen if Let's be empowered to think differently. For human settlements, let's think about increasing sustainability of infrastructure, buildings, and transport. And let's think about blue-green infrastructure and nature-based solutions. Let's keep asking, what if? What could you do? What are your mental models? How could they change? Thanks very much.
Creating a more sustainable future is the challenge of the century. Together, we can engage, inspire, and mobilise for action to improve the situation for people and the planet. How? Through the power of projects. Project management brings together the why, the what, and the how. Let's come together to use our skills for action. Please get ready, because the next session is about to start.